Good morning. This is Inside Nigeria. My name is Winifred Ugwebo, and today's program we are looking at newspaper review. Today is Thursday, 9th October 2025. Of course, we like to flag off with Nigeria's most influential newspaper, Leadership. Leadership's leading story this Thursday is still a developing story on the resignation of the erstwhile Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Uche NNAJI. It says NNAJI'S resignation, rights groups, lawyers demand stringent laws against forgery. NNAJI'S resignation, rights groups, lawyers demand stringent laws against forgery. Probe all Tinubu's minister's certificates, say opposition party Atiku. My leaving not admission of guilt, former minister. The whole story runs on page 4 of Leadership newspaper. Of course, we can't do without reading some excerpts from that leading story. Two prominent civil society organizations, CSOs, the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, and Transparency International Nigeria have demanded stringent laws against forgery. Their comments come after the resignation of the former Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Uche NNAJI. Even though NNAJI said his resignation was not an admission of wrongdoing, the civil society organization stated that the certificate scandal involving the former minister showed that the National Assembly, Department of State Services, DSS, and other security agencies failed in their oversight and investigative duties. The leader of the CSOs, Comrade Auwa Musa Jani, told Leadership in an interview that the alleged NNAJI certificate forgery case showed a gap in Nigeria's screening capacity. Since the Constitution only demands a school certificate for politicians to hold office, Jani cautioned politicians against obtaining fraudulent higher qualifications to secure appointments. The National Assembly and the Senate are not interested in doing any work because they will approve anything the president or the executive wants, which is really abdicating their responsibility because they have not taken the pain to go through the person's credentials and make necessary inquiries about him. And also, the DSS, which screens nominees for federal appointments just to ensure they are not supporting terrorism and criminality in Nigeria, they have all failed in this regard. In that case, it means there's a challenge with our institutional ability and capability to independently do things for the nation outside the president's interest. So what our institutions have turned out to be is regime protection. They are not interested in their image. Some of them are not interested in the image and credibility of the nation. So many relevant institutions almost everywhere in the world are responsible for ensuring that people with criminal records or those with corruption are not allowed into public office. Because public office is a trust. It's not a place you must just be because you are a politician. Quote from the leader of the CSOs, Comrade Auwa Musa Rafsanjani, in an interview with Leadership newspaper. This is excerpts from today's leading story on the paper. NNAJI'S resignation, rights groups, lawyers demand stringent laws against forgery. A developing story arising from the resignation of the erstwhile Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation. We move ahead to other stories gracing the cover of Leadership today. Get child education, Naira stability will reduce poverty, coming from Emir Sanusi. And killings, Christian Association tests government. That story is on page 4 of Leadership. Court adjourns Nnamdi Kanu's trial amid review of health status. Is a developing story also. On page 35 of Leadership, Army deploys brigade to flush kidnappers out of Kwara forest. This is even as stakeholders are calling for the establishment of a military post in Kwara. Tinubu advocates using pension fund for oil sector investments. And on the business bus, on the cover of Leadership, Bank of Industry invests 2 billion naira single-digit loan for core members. Bank of Industry unveils 2 billion naira single-digit loan for core members. The Bank of Industry (BOI) has launched a 2 billion naira single-digit loan program targeted at National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) members nationwide. in a bold move to boost youth entrepreneurship and curb rising unemployment. Under the initiative dubbed the 2 billion naira BOI NYSC entrepreneurship program, 7 corps members can access up to 5 million naira each at a single-digit interest rate of 9% per annum, repayable over 3 years with a 3-month moratorium on both principal and interest. Speaking at the unveiling ceremony in Abuja yesterday, the Executive Director for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises MSME at BOI, Shekararu Omar, described the program as a practical step to move young Nigerians from job seekers to job creators. That's a good one for our youth corpus. Moving from the business story, we move atop the masthead of leadership. President signs law creating 48 police academies. That story runs on page 12 of leadership. And lastly, on the cover of leadership, we reviewed Apapa tin can ports in 48 months, coming from Dan Soho. And that concludes front page review. We'll move towards our stand today in leadership, where we have today's stand. Today's editorial is on diligent trial of Benue Plateau killings suspects. Diligent trial of Benue Plateau killings suspects. Of course, today's stand is calling for the diligent trial of the suspects, alleged suspects of killings in Benue and Plateau. The editorial says, as a newspaper, we laud the DSS for this giant leap, which, if diligently handled, will change the narrative about senseless killings in the country. The fact that some suspects pleaded guilty to their charges showed that the secret police had conducted a clinical investigation and had concrete evidence against them before charging them in court. However, beyond the euphoria that greets their arraignment, the DSS must ensure diligent prosecution of the suspects with all their fundamental rights fully guaranteed. They should be allowed to prove their innocence, failing which they should be served justice if found wanting. Excerpts from today's stand in leadership. Like I always mention, our leadership stand is actually the editorial, is the view, the collegiate view of the paper for the day. And today's view for today from leadership newspaper is on the diligent trial of Benue Plateau killing suspects. From here, we move to the back page of leadership, where we have been blunt with Muazu Elize. Muazu Elize is a group managing director of Leadership Newspaper Limited. Today is writing on Barau can make his lages impactful. Barau can make his lages impactful. Barau is the deputy president of the Nigerian Senate, Barau Jibrin, who has impacted with scholarship about 10,000 less privileged individuals in Kano State. Quote from that column says, we must be driven by actions that empower rather than entrench dependency. Before we leave the back page, let's visit Ghana Must Go. On the news is Senate President Akpabio. It says Senate will remain open to Nigerians. And of course, Ghana Must Go ask for prayers. Over to you, Senator Akpabio. It's on this note we conclude review of Leadership Newspaper this Thursday. For more, log in to www.leadership.ng. We move ahead to other papers we have on our lineup, and that is the Daily Times. Daily Times are previously taking cue from Leadership's leading story. It says NNAJI'S resignation. Article demands independent audit of credentials of fake members. Main leading story today on the Daily Times newspaper. NNAJI'S resignation. Article demands independent audit of credentials of fake members. We move ahead to other papers we have on our lineup. Don't forget to log into the website of Daily Times newspaper for continuation of that headline stories. The next paper we have on our lineup is the Punch newspaper. The Punch says presidency rejects World Bank's poverty report. Nigerians living in poverty rose from 115 million in 2023 to 139 million in 2025, coming from World Bank. Presidency disputes data, defense reforms. World Bank urges action on inflation, poverty. These are kickers to the leading story on today's The Punch newspaper cover story. Presidency rejects World Bank's poverty report. Of course, the World Bank has already reported that Nigerians living in poverty rose from 115 million in 2023 to 139 million presently in 2025. Presidency, while disputing data defense reforms, says World Bank, and World Bank says urges action on inflation and poverty. Main headline story today on the Punch newspaper. For more, log into the website of the Punch. We move ahead to the other papers we have on our lineup, and that is the World Bank. The World Bank is also on the same headline story with the Punch newspaper. World Bank, Nigeria's reforms yielded stability, not relief for poor. Nigeria's reforms yielded stability, not relief for poor. Leading story on today's The Guardian newspaper. World Bank says poverty has surged since 2019 and is projected to stabilize only in 2026 with faster growth and lower inflation. Of course, as usual, The Guardian has illustration beneath the leading story. It says how to bring reform gains home. It talked about food inflation, improve the use of public resources for development, and strengthen the safety net, the social safety net. These are three illustrations beneath the leading story on The Guardian this Thursday. And the source is coming. Source 1, food inflation, reduce food inflation, improve the use of public resources for development, and strengthen the social safety net. These are three factors on how to improve and bring the gains of reform home to Nigerians. Leading story today on The Guardian newspaper. For more, log into the website of The Guardian. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Vanguard. Vanguard story is still on INEC appointment, chair's appointment. It says, new INEC chair for Council of States preview today. New INEC chair for Council of States preview today. Preview in quote. Tinubu to present nominee at today's meeting. Amupitan in top contention. Screened. President in firm control of nomination process. How politicians try to force choice of nominee. APC chairman's institutional input. These are kickers to the leading story on today's Vanguard headline story newspaper. New INEC chair for Council of States preview today. Don't forget to log into the website of Vanguard for continuation of these headline stories. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is The Nation. The Nation's leading story says how reforms are bringing down poverty by presidency. World Bank-led policies reflect on living standard. 139 million could live in poverty by 2025. Same World Bank story on the cover of The Nation newspaper. For more, don't forget to visit the website of The Nation for continuation of these headline stories and other stories gracing the cover of The Nation newspaper today. Well, all too soon is on that note we've come to the end of today's newspaper review on Inside Nigeria, brought to you on Leadership Television. My name is Winifred Weber, your host on the program. Don't also forget to join us same time, same station for another fresh edition of the program tomorrow, and on this station for News on the Hour. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word. Thank you for watching. For